So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and it takes either a brave man or a fool to face off against the very scary black Numenorians on their home turf, but that's exactly what this coalition is going to be doing today as on one of Sin's new maps. And it's always a good sign when Sin starts making maps because it means that development is really ramping up a little bit. And this is called the Arthedain Outpost, so obviously the black Numenorians have sort of established a little settlement here. Plenty of military buildings around here as well, a nice statue of Sauron, very prominent in the centre. But it is going to be two Umbar armies and a Numenor army, sort of making up all of the black Numenorian forces that are going to be defending this location, and a coalition is going to be trying to take this place away from them. Interesting looking map as well as far as the fortress goes. Just a few notes on that before we start getting into the army compositions. Sort of a large sort of raised plateau here with another sort of raised section at the back. Relatively open actually once it's inside, and the choke points are relatively large as well, so it's not actually the easiest settlement to defend, at least on several of the approaches. But there are several places to where the defenders can pull back, and I feel as though this final stand area is a very nice place to defend actually. So while there may be a little bit of a challenge around the outer layers, I feel as though once we start getting into the further back regions, that's where the defenders, especially with heavy infantry factions like Umbar and Numenor, should be in a pretty good place to defend. There's also some areas around the outside as well, should they choose to defend, like some staked trenches. A few buildings as well, should they want to be a little bit more aggressive with their defence. But in a 5v3 you'll rarely see people be aggressive on the defence because the numbers that are against them are simply too much, and especially with quality focused factions like Umbar and Numenor, they don't have the manpower to just discard so readily like that. But we'll go through the armies now. I'll try to be a bit faster than I normally am with this, because obviously it's a 5v3 and the main event is the map after all, and seeing as this is a pre-hotfix build, so the hotfix, this is not with the hotfix stuff sort of added onto it. A lot of the bits and pieces that are going to be added in the hotfix are not going to be a part of this, so talking about the armies in great detail doesn't really make a lot of sense now with some of the small changes that are coming in the cold fix, as Kuro has dubbed it. Engsvitz is going to be playing as Dale. He's got some Blackshot Dragon Slayers here, and interestingly enough the rest of his army is going to be hidden in these trees, but knowing Dale, they're probably going to have a very high count of their heavy archers, which is actually a good thing here, because it means they will be able to skirmish with Umbar and go reasonably toe-to-toe with them actually. When you're on the attack, the defenders are often going to have superior position and superior quality in their archers, and normally the best you can hope for is just to waste their ammunition, but with Dale they might actually be able to hope for a little bit more than that. They will still lose the skirmish fight, I think, overall, as long as Umbar has brought enough archers to deal with that. But they should at least be able to make more of a dent than a faction like, for example, Mordor would be able to give if they were on the attack here. Then, the army in the middle, again, quite a lot of trees here, so quite a lot of the attackers are undercover. We see Arthedain, played by Inaria, so he's got some Arthedain pikemen without the armour upgrade. When you're on the attack, when there are 5 armies against 3, you're obviously going to have less money to play with, so stuff like armour upgrades are often left behind, because even that little bit of extra cost that's incurred is too great, and you want to try and get as many units out onto the field as you can. But the Arthedain pikemen, if they are saved till later, they can be a very nice anchor to the lines, as long as they aren't getting shot by all the archers, of course, which both Umbar and Numenor can bring in great numbers. And the Numenor Gate Guards as well, so the morale buffing unit of Arthedain, a very accomplished pike unit indeed. They'll be having the same role in the hotfix as well. Obviously buffing the morale of the front line, which Arthedain, aren't as morale fragile as Cardlan are, so having a unit that's quite similar to the Wardens of Tir Gorthad in function is very useful, because it obviously means that they're like, obviously, basic Arthedain units will still rout if they're put under extreme pressure, but the Numenor Gate Guards will prevent that from happening to an extent. There's archers that have deployed stakes in the trees of some description out there. Wardens of the North as well, obviously really strong in melee and really strong at range as well with their armor-piercing arrows. They won't have the monopoly on that, because of course Numenor can bring steel bowmen as well. But the Wardens of the North are a really good all-purpose unit, and it'll be interesting to see how they're used here, whether they're saved till later, or whether they shoot into one of the fortified phalanxes early on. And the Trebuchet. So we saw on Austin Harry a few days ago that the Trebuchet can be really effective on the attack, just for sort of whittling down enemy numbers, very accurate, and considering how open this outpost is, a Trebuchet can be really useful as long as it's used at the right times. They need to be, they can't just sort of blow their load too early, as it were. And then we have Darkwolf 44, who's playing as his home faction as Gondor. I think 9 out of 10 times I've seen him play it as Gondor, so he should be very familiar with what they're all about. armor upgraded spearmen, so he has gone for the armor upgrade, which for Gondor is not necessarily the worst idea in the world because their armor upgrades are cheaper after all, and you know it really will make a difference to their abilities in an attrition-y fight when they're going into a lot of arrow fire. Even in melee as well, it'll make them stand up to the punishment a little bit better. Even if the Gondor spearmen are not likely to beat many of Umbar and Numenor's heavy infantry units in a straight melee fight, they do make a good front line because of their ability to take a lot of punishment. We also have a couple of guards of Osgiliath, so more pikes. We can see his entire army pretty much, which is nice. Citadel guardsmen, obviously AP spears, pretty much the big brother to the Gondor spears, better in every way, but also very expensive. One of the more expensive units of non-HP spears in the game, but they're worth every penny. As of course are the Fountain Guard. The Fountain Guard actually in the hotfix is worth saying. I think they're going to have their unit numbers increased a little bit, just to make them sort of, again, that heart and soul of the Gondorian army. Giving them a few more numbers means that there's a little bit more leeway with when you use them, because of course being a phalanx unit without a shield, even with the armour that the Fountain Guard do have, you know, that is still a notable weakness that they, you know, being shot up by arrows, especially in a situation like this. So having a few more men in the unit will help them absorb that a little bit more. Lots of Gondor militia infantry. This is something Darkwolf does like to do. He does like to bring Gondor's lower tier units, and in this situation, definitely the right thing to do. It lets you get a lot of numbers out onto the field. The Gondor militia infantry as well as a sword militia unit will be a little bit more effective in melee than a spear militia. They still won't be match winners by any means, of course, especially with, I think this is the armour upgrade, I think. A lot of the chain coats that they seem to be wearing. But yeah, I mean, as far as overall quality goes, like there is still going to be a big discrepancy to the infantry they're going into, but they will at least stand up a little bit better than spears would. Gondor militia archers as well. Again, good in a skirmish fight. They have a bit of a shield value as well from the shields on their back, but once again, very much the classic approach of trying to wear down your enemy by sort of making them waste their ammo into this unit. Any damage you get in return is a bit of a bonus. Very cheap unit of archers, and yeah, not too surprised to see them brought in this context either. Fully upgraded Gondor archers will be able to do much the same job, but their armour is going to be very, very nice for them. A little bit more expensive, of course, but obviously they're a little bit better at their job as well. And then finally, the veterans of Osgiliath as well, which are a really, really effective unit. They're having their price reduced actually in the upcoming patch, which I think is right because they are more expensive than the marksmen of Caer Andros, but I would prefer to bring the marksmen of Caer Andros in most situations because their abilities in melee are really useful when all is said and done. Veterans of Osgiliath are also very good in melee, but the additional cost, like, I don't really think they're worth the amount more than the marksmen of Caer Andros than they currently are. But that is going to be rectified in the upcoming patch, and also the armour upgrades for them will be fairly expensive as well to sort of reflect that. Sort of a compromise there. They're still going to be Gondor's most expensive mainline archer overall, but they're brought more into line, and the armour upgrades will sort of make them that expensive unit that they currently are. Then we have Dollar Elf, who's going to be playing as Imladris. He's got his god Helem over here. Can you actually go along here? I don't think you can. I think this cliff is impassable terrain, so he's just going to have to go right back down again. And it's not as if the enemies were going to deploy further forwards anyway, but I guess on the off chance they were, he would have been ready. Catapult as well. That must be really difficult to push that heavy weight up that hill, but they're going to have to go right back down again. The rest of his army must be hidden in the trees at the bottom here, I would assume. I certainly hope he can get off this terrain, otherwise those units are going to be very much wasted. But Imladris, obviously, with their quality, very dangerous faction to have, whether on the attack or the defence in a siege. And finally, final member of this coalition trying to take the Black Numenorian stronghold is going to be Mirkwood, played by the Steward of Dale. He's gone for some Blades of Emondwyr, so first hint that maybe he's gone for a little bit more numbers focus, which I do agree with in this situation. Mirkwood, if they do get bottled up, not as drastically as Linden, but they can be shot up pretty badly with their lower arm values, much more focused on melee defense. Hirialth, really good unit of line infantry for the realm of Mirkwood, really good damage, really good melee skill, and they also have a good shield value as well, so they are one of the units which can withstand arrow fire pretty well in the Mirkwood roster, as long as it's from the front. Elder Council, nice javelins, which again in a siege, very, very useful tool, because it's very unlikely that the enemy are going to be able to run away from their defensive positions. A ballista, so yet more siege equipment for the attackers, which is good to see. Ballista might struggle with the angle on this map, but it's worth bringing nonetheless, just on the off chance that you can snipe out enemy siege and the like. Spears of Emondwyr, again the spear variant of the blades we just saw. Huntsman of Amon Lank, so going for some cavalry, which I do think is a wise decision, because there is obviously, with Umbar and Numenor, they have limited cavalry choices, but what choices they do have are pretty high quality, or very high quality actually. So it does pay to sort of be prepared for the fact they could sally out with any sort of unit. We have some Hiri Peng as well, so Mirkwood, of course, when it comes to archers, are going to be very powerful indeed. Hirialth, we've got some Elven King's Palace Guard with the armour upgrade here, so one of the scariest infantry units in the game. And some Ents as well, so they're going to be there trying to batter through the lines. There's obviously going to be numerous units of hidden archers as well. I would assume probably some Wooden Realm Patrol. and some Wardens of Am on flank as well. Now though, we shall move on to the defenders, starting off with the maker of this map and the player who sent me the replay. Big thank you to Sin of the Dark Cloud, playing as his beloved Numenor once again. Remena Bawabrim are going to be a very useful tool in this siege, but only if they're used at the right time. Very limited ammo supply on them, but the steel bows that the Bawabrim have are so useful at dealing with sort of individual targets. So if they bide their time, wait for the right opponent to shoot at, very, very useful indeed. I think he's gone for 3 units of them actually, so going into the red limit perhaps. Royal Legion of Armanelos and a Trebuchet. Several units of Seafarers, which their javelins are going to be so useful as well. Limited ammo supply once again, but they can really blow a hole in an attacking army. Especially if it's the Elves, considering he's facing off more against the Elves, it would seem, than anything else. If he is facing off against the Elves, the damage they can do in quick order will be very, very useful. Adunheim Shadowbows, Rangers obviously must bring for the defenders, at least 1 unit. Pharazim Swordmasters are in there as well, which they will be the undisputed best heavy swordsmen in the game in the hotfix, because they will be going from 2 HP to 3 HP, which will certainly give them a bit of a gap on the Noldorin Blade Masters, which is interesting. I'm very interested to see how that works balance-wise, but we shall see. Remena Abarim, very good choice for holding down the front line. Naru Naaru Sentinels and some cavalry as well, so some Karibarim and some Pharazim Nobles, so a good decision for the attackers to bring some form of cavalry. Numenor's cavalry is more at home with dealing with enemy cavalry than it is being aggressive, but I think if they can use the Karibarim as sort of makeshift lancers, that will be very useful if they can get some hammer and anvil. Viper action for Umbar has also brought the full complement of cavalry, so they could really be sallying out here, which is interesting to see. Alcarondas Faithful and Warlords of Umbar. We've got some Adunheim Shield Guard and some Naru Naaru Sentinels holding down this choke. Alcarondas Legion Balakith Shield Bearer is a unit which is going to be made a little bit better in the hotfix, which is very good, because they're probably one of the most underwhelming units in Umbar's roster, which is a shame because they look cool with their big shields and their maces. But yeah, even with the armour upgrade, they're just not resilient enough in comparison to the Alcarondas Legion. And because their mace men are not heavy axemen, they don't deal armour-piercing damage quickly enough to really be worth bringing in most situations. They do have a few niches, but the niche is too narrow in my opinion. And I think the developers agree, which is why they're going to be buffed. Harbingers of Castamere, over here obviously heavy swordsmen. Balakith Axe Guard, a little bit more worthwhile than the Shield Bearers, but they can still have their downfalls. We have some Balakith Marksmen as well, very useful to have a heavy archer presence in this situation. Shield Bearers, Corsair Blackguards, Alcarondas Legion, Naru Naaru Sentinels over here. Over on this side of things we have Eclipse 2500, who's going to be Naru Naaru Sentinels. Castamere's Rangers are in there as well apparently, which are pretty much a given with Rangers on the defence. Alcarondas Legion in high numbers, Corsair Blackguards, Balakith Axe Guard, and what have we got going on over here? Some Alcarondas Legion, and a Ballista, and there may be a few units further back here, but I'm not sure. Probably some cavalry hidden in the trees, an infantry unit or 2 hidden up here and there, and then over on the other side there's some more Naru Naaru Royal Guards. So, I will make a little bit of a cut here because I'm not sure whether the defenders are going to sally out with their cavalry immediately and be hyper-aggressive right from the off. If it is, then the cut will be very short. But I would imagine the attackers are going to slowly shift their way forwards. Imladris has got to reposition themselves off that mountain, which is going to take them a little bit of time. So I'm not sure whether there'll be a large gap or whether the gap will be relatively short. But I'll make a cut here and we'll rejoin when the action is beginning. So this is not what I expected when I thought of the first action that I have noticed on the battlefield today. Some Corsair fencers charging out from their defensive positions, sort of tripping over themselves. They were going to try and hunt down these Blackshot Dragon Slayers, which extended very far beyond the rest of the Daelian army to get on this slight bit of raised terrain. But you can also see here the Warlords of Umbar are going to pounce on them immediately. They were the unit that were hidden in the trees over here, and they're going to be able to get over this hump now. It's not the ideal place to get a charge, to be honest, and the Warlords are not going to want to stay in melee with the Blackshots for too long because they're very capable of defending themselves with those large swords. But Umbar definitely need, if they're going to try and pounce on this unit of Blackshots immediately and kill off what is Engsvitz's general, they're going to need to be quick because the rest of the Daelian army is scrambling to come over here and save them, which is completely understandable. You really don't want to be losing your general at this point. Here come the Corsair fencers. They're going to throw their projectiles. And as an assassin unit, they will be being made a little bit more useful in the upcoming patch. So that's just a universal thing for any faction that has assassins, like the Hashari, Thieves of Tharbad, Corsairs, Fencers, and the like. The Mirkwood variant as well, and I've actually completely forgotten the name of the Mirkwood variant because it's been so long since I've actually seen them used. Meanwhile, on the front line, a much more by-the-book skirmish fight going on over here. Balakith Marksmen obviously in position, firing down at the initial skirmish lines that are being sent forward by a combination of Arthedain and Gondor. I'd imagine this is where Gondor are going to be very much at home. Not sure where Viper Action is going here. He's just inviting a cavalry charge if he goes too far forwards. He's going to try and get in position, I think, to maybe shoot at the pikemen, which is actually worthwhile, because as it is, he's shooting into these archers over here, and there's mixed in among the archers, there are the Gondor Militia Infantry and the Citadel Guard, which is making life quite difficult for them. But yeah, going after the pikes, if you can manage it, is a worthwhile thing, because you're more likely to score kills on them, although the Gate Guard's armour is such that it might actually be a little bit more difficult to do that. In the end, I think Dale have gotten away with this to a large extent. The Corsair fencers have retreated because they were getting shot by the rest of the Dalian army. And the charge from the Warlords of Umbar, unfortunately for them, it was, in theory, it was a good ambush and executed reasonably well, but the terrain was just not on their side. You'd think that coming up and over the hill would be a good charge, but because of where it was, you have to sort of go slowly up the hill and then right at the lip. Trying to charge back down is going to be quite difficult for a cavalry unit, so unfortunately for them they weren't able to expose the Blackshot Dragon Slayers in quite that way, and Engsvitz is not likely to make that mistake a second time, sending a unit all on their lonesome out here. That's not going to happen again, I don't think. The Imladris army is slowly making their way forward, swords of Rivendell, Imladris sentries, Norotino warriors and the like, so now we can see the full fury of their army, and it is mostly a quality focus. Well, actually no, there's a lot of swords of Rivendell in here. And Norotino warriors, so it is actually more of a numbers focus from Imladris, although numbers focus for the elves is still reasonably high quality, of course, which I actually kind of agree with, because I do feel as though Numenor oh, excuse me, I think I am losing my voice again, but Numenor and Umbar have got qualities as such that with a money advantage like this, it might not actually be the best idea for Imladris to go quality heavy, but I feel as though if they had, excuse me, really just needed to clear my throat for a second there. But yeah, like, if they had coordinated with Mirkwood a little bit more, I think going quality heavy could actually have really worked out. Mirkwood going for a little bit more numbers, and Imladris going for a little bit more quality, that's a very potent combination indeed. Or vice versa, to be honest with you, that would have worked out just as well. But here you can see Gondor moving forward, pressuring a little bit more with their melee infantry, making it so that the pikes can't be shot at range now because there's melee infantry here. Combination of Citadel Guard and Gondor Militia Infantry, I like the combination of low tier numbers focused units and higher tier quality focused units as well. I think that's a good mix by Dark Wolf, and if they are going to move forwards, it's a good choice. I think Sin was thinking of charging in there, but he needs to think twice before he does that, because the Citadel Guard are in here, and that is the last unit you want to be charging into, really. You may do some damage off the initial charge, but the damage your cavalry is going to take from the armor-piercing spears, especially considering the amount of money they've invested into it, is not worthwhile, and the Knights of Numenor are right here as well, so it is interesting here because they've brought so much cavalry. The defenders, they can't really afford to let themselves get bottled up too much, but I feel as though that's what's already kind of happened. And they have pulled back a little bit as well, so they're making the settlement a little bit smaller at this point in time. Daly and Bowman are moving forward. They can still escape from this angle, I would say, against Mirkwood. You can see here the Warlords of Umbar and Alcaron as faithful, but this is the last thing you want to be doing with cavalry. Dancing around in front of an enemy army that clearly has got a lot of ranged presence, because you're just going to be bleeding unit models, and again, like, they need to be a little bit more decisive with their cavalry. I think here, if you're going to bring this amount of cavalry, you need to have a very clear plan in mind for what you're going to do with it. Otherwise, it's just going to be a waste. And Imladris are over here, but they've got their pikes out in front. They're going to try and go around the houses, I think, and maybe try and hit Arthedain from the side. But I mean, Arthedain are ready for this. A single unit of Knights of Numenor is not going to be enough to stop both of the Umbar Knights. You can see here there are Riders of the Bruinen as well, who are first and foremost horse archers. They are spear cav in melee as well. So I mean, I feel as though that I'm not feeling the cavalry at this point from the defenders. Which is weird, because normally Sin and Co are quite decisive with their cavalry and moving forward, but I feel as though they've been a little bit hesitant to do so in this match, and I feel as though it could cost them. You know, they've got Evendim spearmen moving forward, they've got spears in support. The devil is in the details here, though. If the attackers do make misplays, like the Knights of Numenor are charging in here, a little bit further ahead of their spear support. Alcaron Das Faithful are lighter on numbers, though. But I mean, the upshot here is, like, there's no way that Umbar Knights are going to be able to kill off all of these Knights of Numenor this quickly. And in come the spears, Gondor Spearmen, Evendim Spearmen, there are Citadel Guard in there as well. Gwythi Rockdo are coming in from behind as well, so it is worth mentioning at this point that the attackers have clearly invested quite a bit in their own cavalry as well. But this is a bit of a disaster, to be honest with you. This is something that it looked pretty bad, and my fears have come to pass, I think. Ravenna Caribbean are going to charge right head on into this section of line. And to be fair, actually, Sin was paying attention, because the Citadel Guard, they had spread out a little bit more. They weren't as concentrated as they once were, and the Caribbean can now try and charge in and out. But with Evendom Spears and Citadel Guard now here and realising this is happening, I think this is more desperation than anything else. This is like, we've got to get some value off of our cavalry, we've got to charge in and do something, but there's not a big pile of bodies here mounting up from the Caribbean, and they rout, unsurprisingly, in the face of Citadel Guard and advancing Knights of Numenor. So yeah, a disastrous use of the cavalry here from the defenders. They're quite fortunate that the factions that they are so good when they're dug in with their heavy infantry. Otherwise, I would say the match may already be getting away from them. But fortunately for them, I do feel as though if they play their cards right, if they dig in with their archers, with their rangers, and with their heavy infantry, they do still stand a very good chance at getting something out of this fight. But yeah, they needed to be a little bit more aggressive with their cavalry right from the outset. I think they let themselves get bottled up. They let the attackers sort of tighten the noose, and at that point it was never looking good. It's never what you want to see if you're the defenders and you invest that much in your cavalry as well. Pharazim Nobles, Ravenna Caribbean, the Umbar Knights, all of these units are 1,000 florins plus, which is a big portion of your money. And when you're dealing with factions like Mirkwood and Imladris on the attack, Gondor as well with their infantry focus, the archers that Arthedain and Dale can bring to the table, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage right from the off, really. It's a very good mix of factions that are on the attack, to be honest with you. But what happens now? The attackers taking their time, as they've earned the right to do. They've already got some value off. There's no need for them to rush into anything over here. The Corsair crossbows are reloading, but they've revealed themselves again a little bit early. A little bit early for my tastes. And immediately, the attackers, all of these players of course have got plenty of experience playing the game, and as soon as the Corsair crossbows reveal themselves, they're immediately under archer fire from the Gondorian approach and from the Dalian approach. And the glass cannons that the Corsair crossbows are, they're taking a lot of damage here. Meanwhile, Sin coming out with this second unit of Ravenna Caribbean. And again, I see no reason to think why this is going to go any differently to how it did previously. Yeah, they get into shield wall there. Forward come the Gondor spears. Gondor has been on point, but this is a good charge. I mean, finally some good news for the cavalry. The Ravenna Caribbean do manage to get into the Arthedain marksmen. They advanced a little bit too eagerly ahead of the spear support, I think. It's not the end of the world, of course, for the attackers, but finally a bit of value from the defending cavalry. The Ravenna Caribbean that have returned from routing as well, once again, are just going into spears. They may be basic spears, they're not going to get absolutely minced in the same way that they would against Citadel Guard, but I mean, it's still spears at the end of the day. Trebuchet putting some pressure on, missing actually though, which for the Trebuchet is a rarity nowadays. They will at least clip a unit, if nothing else. Wooden Realm Patrol coming in. Yeah, that's a scary sight to see, isn't it? Imladris and Mirkwood massing up on one side. Viper action's going to have to be on point here, but at the very least, in terms of a skirmish fight over a long period of time, Umbar would probably fancy their chances against Mirkwood. As long as they can make Mirkwood use up most of their ammunition to the point where they're not dealing heavy damage to important units for Umbar, important infantry units, which is what Mirkwood really want. More easy for them to do on a field battle than a siege battle like this, but even so, the attackers have done all the right things so far, only a very minor mistake with regards to letting that cavalry charge into the archers, but even then, you can see the charge wasn't that devastating, and a good portion of that can be attributed to the fact that Caribbean are spear cav and not lancers. They do have a good charge, but it's not an outstanding charge. And we may be getting into the middle of some melee engagements now as Gondor move forward. Militia infantry combined with spears, not a lot of damage going to be dealt to a unit like a Dunaim Shield Guard, especially not when they're backed up by El Carondas Legion. But Gondor taking point, and I think they have got the best armour to take point with, because Arthedain's main line, of course, involves quite a lot of pikes, and they're going to want to save them till later, certainly. Over here, the Dalian Bowmen and the Dalian army set up quite nicely. You can see they do have a little bit of, they know that there's a unit still over there, so they've got their spearmen at the back, Bardian marksmen over here as well, which is wise. I mean, that is the thing, like when you know there's a unit of knights in behind you, you need to sort of split your attention at least a little bit, which can be a pain for Dale, but all Dale need to do is sort of occupy attention here, I think. I think the main damage is going to come from the joint Arthedain Gondor assaults and the joint Elven assault on the other side. Dale, they just need to be here, they need to be shooting, playing the long game in the way that Dale often like to do. Meanwhile, bit of a charge forward here, a foray forwards from the Alcarondas Legion. And they will win this fight against the Militia Infantry and the Gondor Spears. I think they will need the support of the Arthedain Shield Guard eventually. They're actually going to pull back as well. Again, it's the little things that are starting to mount up for me which make me think maybe the defenders just aren't on it today. Because again, what's the point in doing that? Like they're engaging a little bit, sure, but on the retreat they're going to take losses. If they're going to do this, they need to move forward and engage. Sort of, they do still have this choke point. If the Arthedain Shield Guard just sort of stretch themselves out along here, they can assist the Alcarondas Legion. And it says they're going to win, and they will. But the problem is, there's tons and tons of reinforcements, and Gondor won't mind too much about losing some militia, and they've got plenty more Gondor spearmen. And you can see here, Gondor militia archers also trying to shoot in, get some value off your cheap archers as well. And I think Gondor have done a very good job so far. For not an awful lot of money, I think they've made a good amount of ground. Meanwhile, what's going on over here? Riders of De Bruyne combing the woods. They know there's a unit of cavalry back here somewhere, so they're going to try and find it. If the Huntsmen of Amon Lanka are around here somewhere as well, and the Gwaithdy Rockdor, like, they should send those units over there as well, because they need to root out that cavalry, I think, so that Dale can focus their full attention on moving through the settlement, more so than what's happened over here. Daly and Bowman have taken a bit of a beating, and it's from the Corsair crossbows, it has to be. But that's more bolts that have been used on Daly and Bowman, which for the attackers ultimately is a good thing. Like, Daly and Bowman are all well and good, but the Corsair crossbows would have been hoping to use their ammunition on something a little bit more dangerous. Knights of Numenor coming over here as well, going to try and root out those warlords of Umbar which are in the trees. So good communication here from the attackers, and good battlefield awareness. They're not forgetting about those knights. I mean, Dale obviously won't, but Dale has obviously communicated to his allies, like, look, there's a unit of knights over here. Your cavalry's not going to be useful in the interior of the settlement, at least for a while. Could you come over here and help me deal with that so I can send my full force through the settlement rather than dividing my attention? Definitely the right thing to do. Having said that, Riders of De Bruyne need to be a little bit careful, because if they get one-on-one with Warlords of Umbar, there's only going to be one winner. They will put up a decent fight, but they're not knights. Knights trump all when it comes to the cavalry of this world. They're getting very close at this point. There they are. They found them. So what will the Warlords of Umbar do now? Because the Knights of Numenor are on their way over, and as Lance Knights, I do prefer the Knights of Numenor to the Warlords. They're just more resilient, and they've got more men in the unit as well at this point. Riders of De Bruyne as well. Not sure how much ammunition they still have left. They do still have some. They're going to be able to kite the Warlords around. It'll take a long time to kill the Warlords from the front with their armour, their shields, their multiple HP, but I mean, they're not going to catch the Riders of De Bruyne. So I mean, it's free damage, and it's not as if they're going to be used for much else. I mean, it's going to be, I think here, Knights of Numenor should just go in. They should just go in. They're going to win. They've got more units. Also, the Riders of De Bruyne are shooting the Warlords of Umbar from behind. They could try and be really, really efficient with this and just try and kill the Warlords of Umbar at range and try and kite with the Knights of Numenor, but honestly, I don't think it's worth doing that, because you do run the risk of getting charged in the rear by the Knights of Numenor. And this is a sign, I think, that Eclipse has just given up on this unit at this point. He's just looking to get some sort of value off of it. Just, again, another story of the Defenders' cavalry being useless at this point in the battle, to be honest with you. Now the Knights of Numenor are going to come charging forward. A little bit closer to the range support, I think, from the Blackshot Dragon Slayers, and the Riders of De Bruyne now shooting in. So yeah, going to be an absolute wash for the Warlords of Umbar. Probably going to rout as well. And this is a settlement with no town centre. What are they going to do here? They're going to try and charge into the Dalian Spear, but they're getting Last Samurai'd every time they do that. And the Dalian Spear is not going to take a huge amount of losses there. Spears obviously are much better at dealing with cavalry charges like that than anything else. They're going to try and push through, but yeah, that's the end of the Warlords. They knew their fate, and they accepted it. But again, really good from the attackers, I have to say. I've been really impressed with the attackers so far, which in a 5v3 is a really poor sign for the defenders. Like I said, if it were factions that I weren't feeling quite so confident about on the defence, I would say this battle is already sort of really tilting in one direction. But because Numenor and Umbar are so good in terms of their heavy infantry holding power, and the fact they've both got really good archers, armour-piercing archers, body-piercing rangers, they do still have every chance at winning this. Meanwhile, Romena Caribrim, so Sin trying to get some value. We'll see if he can get some value with that cavalry, and he is actually. Those units exposed back here, the Woodland Realm Patrol. Looks like they've already had a bit of a harsh time of it, skirmishing with the Balaketh marksmen. But also, now getting charged by Cav. So finally, Bit of good news for the cat, but the Huntsman of Amon Lanka coming over here now as well, with the damage the Cerebrum have already taken. That's an interesting fight. If both units were fully healthy, I'm actually not sure who'd win that. I think it'd be the Huntsman, because they've got higher melee defense. The Mirkwood cavalry in general is just really difficult to deal with in melee like that. Going to try and charge into the rear of the spears again, just trying to get some value off before they're inevitably sandwiched. And the Cerebrum, quite fortunate actually that the charge wasn't a good connection, or at least an excellent connection. In come the Ents. Yeah, the Spears of Amenduir are going to need a little bit of support. I mean, the Ents are coming in now. There's a lot of arrow support coming in as well. It's good to see the Swords of Rivendell coming forward. Sort of a heavy-duty infantry engagement is something Imladris tend to relish a little bit more than Mirkwood. But with the Ents here, there are of course our crossbows here as well, but yeah, with all of this support from the Ents and the like, Nara and Iron Sentinels are coming in now. More archers that are out of ammunition. Gwythi Rockdora over here as well. The ballista is way far back, but yeah, I mean the attackers will probably feel reasonable about this. I mean the Ents are the only thing that they've got committed that are sort of genuine value. Nara and Iron Sentinels taking a lot of damage, and again a unit of really strong pikes like that, Ents can be really good at dealing with that. But the one problem the Ents do have is they're a little bit isolated from their support back here, and a lot of this Umbar infantry is of really high quality. Like a Dunaim Shield Guard are not going to do damage particularly quickly, but they're really tough to kill. The Balakith Shield Bearers, this isn't a situation where they actually will be kind of useful. Not as much as heavy Axemen, again, but the armor piercing of those maces will do some damage against the Ents. The charges from the Cerebrum as well are not flush, but they are still doing damage. So finally a bit of good news for the defenders, I think. And they're still able to hold the attackers at bay, but I mean it's still not a particularly clean front line, which often will favour the attackers. Boabram are coming over to this side, as well as some Naru Naaru Royal Guard, so some good ranged pressure going to be coming on. Of course their crossbows are firing at this point. The ballista trying to get some good shots, and to be fair, with the angle they could get some excellent shots right through the Corsair crossbow line. There's a big assault happening at this point. Corsair Blackguards. Seems like they're just clipping the top of some of their heads at this point. Elder Council firing their javelins, so it's a pretty big committal actually from Mirkwood, now that you think about it. Dale are also doing the same over on this side with a bit of support from Arthedain. Barding Herd are moving in, Alcarondas Legion, and I think over here the defenders are less prepared, to be honest with you. Dale are coming forward in big numbers. They need to reinforce this line, to be honest with you. If they get overrun here, then the attackers are going to pour in. And I'd smell blood in the water if I were Dale and Arthedain at this point. Send forward more units. There's gaps here that can be exploited. You can get into the Corsair Blackguards, stop them from firing, get into the Seafarers and stop them from firing. Dalian Spearmen are in here as well, so it's going to make life even more difficult for the cavalry, which time and time again has not really been acting to its capacity. They're shaken though, the Dalian units, which is a sign they are getting hit by probably the javelins, to be honest. So the game crashed, which means I assume there were actually rangers firing in there, or there was just such a high concentration of crossbow and javelin fire that the game just couldn't handle it, which I find hard to believe. I think probably it was the blood spray of the rangers, but obviously that means that I just remembered how many rangers are actually on the field today, and so now I'm sort of quite concerned. I think we're going to have to walk on eggshells for the rest of this fight, and be a little bit careful with how things are. Also, in a cityscape map like this, I don't know how the amount of fences that are sort of hidden in behind all these buildings to prevent them sort of being see-through are, but that does concern me a little bit as well. Remember Boabram, meanwhile, shooting into the Hiri Youth. I'm a little bit concerned to get close to these fights now, if I'm being perfectly honest. Balakith Shield Bearers and Balakith Axe Guard are still in here. A lot of AP damage, not necessarily the most useful against the elves like this, but high damage in addition to the AP arrows that are coming in. It's a really brutal fight over on this side actually for both sides, because while the defenders obviously with their smaller armies, well, smaller numbers overall, are really not going to want to continue to take this to kind of losses, neither are the elves. Like the elves of all factions, of course, are really reliant on their numbers holding together a little bit better than they currently are, perhaps. And the Boabram doing some good job, but you know, Boabram, not a lot of ammunition on them, so using them early means it's something the attackers won't have to deal with later, and they do have reserves, maybe not quite as dense as the human units that are on the other sides, but the elves do still have men in reserve here. Balakith Marksman over here, Balakith Axe Guard. Feel a little bit more comfortable about zooming in on this fight because there's really no ranged units firing back and forth as it stands. We can see here that the Balakith Shield Bearers moving in here as well. A bit of AP, which is going to be useful against the Gondorians that are here on the front line, as well as the Arthedain forces, but also the fact that there are no ranged units firing in does mean that the pikes are free to engage, so the Annuminous Gate Guards have come forward, which which is a very good move. The Arthedain troops at the very least will take a little bit more of a beating now before they waver and break ultimately. Yeah, I mean, a few units in reserve here, but definitely the place where there's the biggest push is over here. But once again, I really feel a sense of genuine trepidation about zooming in, because there were almost certainly Rangers firing in here, which was the cause of the crash. Of course, our Blackguards are also firing, but we can see the general shape, and you can see that reinforcements have been added by Sin's Numenor army, which is necessary. Like, they can't afford to allow Dale and Arthedain to wash in here, because there's simply too much space to cover, and they would then need to pull all the way back to the town centre, the final layer. But in so doing, they would have to abandon all of the troops they've got defending against Gondor and the elves as well, which, needless to say, would be an absolute disaster as far as the defenders are concerned. They can't afford to lose more manpower than they already have. Castamir's Rangers are firing, which is almost certainly the reason, because they're shooting in from there into the backs, which is why, in spite of the fact they've got superior numbers and knights charging into the line, will be why they're going to lose, or at least it's build they're going to lose. Dismounted Elves of Dale are in there, which are a very strong unit in their own right, not as damaging as the Remena Abarim, but still a very strong unit, certainly in the same sort of category as the Remena Abarim and the Alcarondas Legion. Maybe their armour is more their focus than anything else. Corsair Blackguards trying to go in and out, trying to sort of compensate for the Prec trait, but they're getting shot up by arrows now. Veterans of Osgiliath firing in. Gondor Militia Archers are still over here as well. The Trebuchet trying to move around. But slowly but surely, I think, is probably the best way for them to deal with this. I mean, the Avendim Spearmen are shaken. The Unuminous Gate Guards, though, over here, having a unit of pikes of this quality sort of shoring up this assault is really all you're going to need to have a good amount of success, I think. As long as you're willing to continue to send reinforcements in, which Gondor obviously are. I mean, as soon as I say that, the Gondor Spearmen mobilise, and they're going to get towards the front line. Few ranged units in support as well. Corsair Crossbows, you can see over here. The Imladris Catapult. Grazing hits on Umbar, but grazing hits might be all it takes, though, to be fair. Harbingers of Castamir are down here. It's been brutal, but Umbar is still standing, and this is what I was talking about earlier on. The fact that Umbar is such a good heavy infantry faction, capable of taking a lot of punishment in melee, bodes well for them later. In spite of the fact that cavalry, that was a mix of friendly fire and hits into Umbar, but because the elves were already flagging on the front line, it's enough to send the Elder Council routing and the Balakath Axe Guard doing the business in melee, and now they're actually going to get into the cavalry as well. Heavy Axemen, outside of your traditional anti-cavalry units like spears and pikes, obviously, halberdiers as well. Heavy Axemen are the best tool to use against cavalry for me, because of their damage. AP is generally good against cavalry as well, although against the Huntsmen I guess that's not true. They rout though, because the cavalry damage was enough. They were also taking damage from other sources as well. Elder Council trying to do the business, but that catapult has actually been more of a hindrance than a help over on this side of things for the attackers so far. Balakath Axe Guard. Swords of Rivendell, they do match up quite favourably to heavy axemen usually, but the numbers are not on their side. I think though Umbar at this point, they're going to fall back. I think they see which way the wind is blowing elsewhere in the fight. They're going to try and pull back some units from this front line as well. They are Alcarondas Legion and Naranara Sentinels. The Skeleton Crew being left behind, and Balakath Shield Bearers to hold back the hordes. That to me is a sign that this engagement over here... Are there Rangers firing in? I don't think so. Let's not get too crazy and get too close in, because it could be attacking Rangers as well. Bardian Marksman and Kelvin River Troll. Oof, that's not great either. Trebuchet firing right into the heart, but yeah, they're pulling back at this point. They're going back to the final layer at this point, the defenders, which I think is wise, because at some point this position here is going to be lost. With the Javelins and the Archers doing the damage that they're currently doing, the Remena Abarim were never going to hold on for that long. And one has to wonder how many Remena Abarim lost their lives to a lost cause here. But they're going to try and retreat. Can they be cut off? I wonder. Balakath Shield Bearers are routing because they were left all alone. Axe Guard, are they going to be able to make it back in time? Of course, our Blackguards are here. They need to save those crossbows especially. Blackguards are moving in. Morroquendi Pikes. I mean, this would be a good time to use the Rangers, to be honest with you, which means it's a good time for me to go back to the final stand. Ballista. Finding some good use as well for Umbar, as well as the Trebuchet. All of this artillery going to be capable of doing a lot of damage. The attackers, they need to be quick here. They don't have the luxury of taking their time like they did earlier on to sort of set themselves. They need to move forward quickly and continue to engage. There's a lot of units still up here for the defenders, and they, making the fight narrow into this one choke point with a lot of positions to put their archers and their rangers is going to be a good thing for their chances at winning the fight, not for my frames or my chances of not crashing. Gwythi Rockdoor being held up on by Corsair Blackguards. Going to zoom in here, take my life into my hands. Corsair Blackguard's being used as the rear guard. They may be out of ammunition, to be fair, which means they're a pretty good candidate to sort of lead behind. Caribrim also doing the same, but the Gwythi Rockdor are coming in. Moragwendi Pikes leading the way alongside Barding Herd. In come the Pharazim Nobles. They're still pretty healthy, to be fair, because they weren't used earlier on in the fight, so they may have the opportunity to get some good charges in now, but at this point the battlefield is so narrow. I'm not sure whether cavalry of any sort is going to be that useful for the defenders, but Pharazim Nobles are good. Remena Caribrim moving back as the Huntsmen of Amon Lank and the Riders of the Bruinen force them back. Another unit of Corsair Blackguards revealing themselves. They got to have ammunition still. Although it looks like they're resting their scimitars on their shoulders and not javelins. They're also going to get engaged by Bardian Marksmen. No armour upgrade on these lads. And also a rear charge from the Huntsmen of Amon Lank. Another unit that's just been left behind to try and delay the attackers from moving in. But Dale took damage pushing through here, to be sure. I mean, the Rangers firing into them certainly didn't help matters, but they took damage. So now I think it's going to be up to the Gondorians, perhaps, and Arthedain to try and pick up more of the slack. Arthedain took damage over there as well, though. Going to have to share the load a little bit here, because certainly for the outer defences, the Elves, I think, maybe had the hardest time pushing through. They still have a lot of really strong units, of course, the Elves. They're certainly not hurting for quality, but maybe wasn't as smooth as the Elves were hoping for over here, especially seeing as the line wasn't that well organised from the defenders. They were maybe hoping to exploit that a little bit more than they ended up doing. But in the end, the defenders recovered quite well over there, I have to say. But it's a pretty scary sight to see all of those Black Numenorians lining up, ready to fire. I mean, it could turn into a skirmish fight here. Depending on how much ammunition the attackers still have left, they may want to try and wear the defenders down that way, rather than charging into the choke point and leaving themselves wide open for the Arthedain Shadow Bows and the inevitable Castamir's Rangers that are going to be firing. A bit of high ground over here as well. Corsair Crossbows have had mixed fortunes in this battle. They've clearly done a lot of damage in some of the choke points, but they've also taken quite a bit of damage as well. Definitely been a target of the attackers so far. But considering how poorly this started for the defenders, with regards to their cavalry sally-outs, and considering the fact that the attackers have made decent progress through the settlement, they're not doing that badly, the defenders. Things have progressed in an okay manner for them. Corsair Crossbows firing away. Bawabrim are over there. Castamir's Rangers are still hidden. Paranoid about the Rangers suddenly opening fire on a big blob. In which case I really don't want to be at ground zero when that happens, otherwise it's rip game. Over here though, Hiri Peng starting to fire. Mirkwood with some ammunition in the late game are always a dangerous beast. Whether they're on the defence in a siege, attack in a siege, or in a field battle, it's something they will often try to do. Noratuno warriors also moving forward. There's a lot of attackers organising themselves, getting ready for the final foray into enemy territory. There's still 20,000 frames, so it's going to be a long slog into opposition territory, it must be said. Ooh, that's the telltale signs of Rangers opening fire. I zoomed out just in time. Castamir's Rangers, 2 units of Castamir's Rangers as well, I think. Yeah, it is. Both units from Eclipse as well, so he's gone for 2 units, going into the red limit, which on a defensive siege, going into the red limit on Rangers is a very justifiable thing to do indeed. Corsair Crossbows as well, so his firing banks are truly opening up now, trying to do some damage to the Arthedain men-at-arms. Reasonably well armoured, to be fair, but some good damage achieved there. Corsair Blackguard, meanwhile, fighting in a sort of isolated case here against the Swords of Rivendell. They'll win that fight as well, the Blackguards, considering how depleted those swordsmen are. Back here though, how do the attackers approach this now? Eldarenway Archers, that's a nice unit to have in the late game, not only for their ranged abilities but also they're good in melee. Citadel Guard, not sure why they're back here. Are their cavalry units still roaming around the outside? What's going on over here? Nope, that's routing Balakathak's Guard. So yeah, they really don't need to be back there. All the cavalry's already been dealt with. Well, it's either already been dealt with or it's now trapped in their final stand, because this large courtyard with the statue of Sauron is the only position, I think, from which you can escape from that final stand. So it's all or nothing now. Those Citadel Guard are going to need to be on the front line at some stage. Meanwhile, there's still an Alcarondas Legionnaire over here. He is completely surrounded by Gondor Militia Infantry. Slowly but surely they're going to try and... I mean, they've got him stun locked, so eventually they're surely going to be able to bring him down, but will any of them lose their lives in the doing? Yes, they will. Goes to show the extreme quality difference between two armies. He can't have been a very popular member of his unit. The other lads just sort of stood around and watched him get stabbed through the cranium. But yeah, there he goes. Brought down now. Ballistae firing in, trying to snipe out enemy artillery pieces, I believe. Arthedain men-at-arms going forward to try and deal with the Black Guards as well. Are they going after? Yeah, they're going after the Trebuchet, I think. They do have the shot to do it. If the Trebuchet still has ammunition, that would be a very good pick for the attackers as well. Another good move that they've made in this fight. We've only just now actually moved past the 20k frames left mark, so still a long way to go in this fight. And I would imagine there's probably going to be a little bit of a lull in proceedings here as the attackers figure out how they want to approach this. Because I mean, for the defenders, it's obvious what they want to do. They want to set up a strong defence here in the middle and set up a brutal crossfire with their rangers, their crossbows and any javelins they may have remaining. The attackers want to avoid that, because if that happens, the defenders win this fight. The question is, though, how do they avoid it? Casimir's rangers are here, not hidden. This unit of Casimir's rangers is now reloading. Firing in there. I mean, getting some... A lot of that is just militia units, but it's a decent blob to shoot into with a depleted unit of rangers, I suppose. Try and give the attackers something to think about. Don't give them an entirely comfortable ride as they move forward and figure out how they want to engage your true front line. But yeah, it is a risky one because there's a ballista here as well. If they park that on the edge of the cliff, flaming ballista bolts through the side of the army, that's going to be routing an awful lot of soldiers. Even the elves will rout pretty quickly under that kind of pressure. The Numenor Naruna Sentinels with their blue capes. Yeah, I mean, they've definitely taken losses here, and in terms of numbers, sheer numbers, you would say the defenders would be in trouble, but the defensive position they have here at the back with the units they have, I actually think they're in reasonably good shape, which is surprising considering how well the attackers have played up to this point. To still be at a bit of a disadvantage, in my opinion, is interesting. But the attackers could choose to engage this in a different way. I mean, they're certainly trying to take their time a little bit more, which is the right thing to do, in my opinion. Those rangers are still firing. Some rotting meat. That is a sign usually that the Trebuchet is out of ammunition. I think they might have actually killed one of their own Bawabra in there with a direct hit. Yes, they did. The meat causing the death of one of their own men. The Bawabra now moving down, watching those Castamir's rangers like a hawk to make sure we're not there at ground zero when they do start genuinely firing. Bawabra though. Farazim nobles escaping their clutch is going to charge into the Gondor militia infantry, get some more value. Might be enough to rout them even. They want to steer clear of the Arthedain pikemen though, definitely. Again, more misses from that ballista. It's rare you see a ballista miss so many shots against a trebuchet like that. The trebuchet is a reasonably large piece of artillery as well, but considering the fact they're flinging rotting meat is a sign they're probably not... probably don't have any ammunition left. Sauron won't be too pleased about rotting meat hitting his statue though. There we go, finally. One of the trebuchets falls. The initial assault not going too well though, as the Farazim nobles continue to push forward, really delving deeply into the enemy lines here, but they're going to need to be careful because there's obviously plentiful spears ready to meet their advance. They're going to move across as well, get into the Arthedain marksmen. Ah, there we go. So they weren't out of ammunition at all. It was just a savvy ploy, a ruse to try and get the ballista to stop firing at them, but they weren't buying it. And the ballista continued to fire, and they're going to continue to do so. And that's it, yeah, they're on fire now. So they didn't fall for the ruse, the attackers, and as a result the trebuchet has fallen. The trebuchet for the defenders has not really netted as much value as they were hoping, I'm sure. Dale moving forward. Dalian paladins are moving forward. That's a big committal of a unit. Of course, our crossbows firing. No rangers firing. Casimir's rangers still hidden. There'd be a real temptation to go after the Dalian paladins because of the kind of unit they are. Good quality unit of AP shock infantry, which is exactly the sort of thing that will be useful against the heavily armoured defenders. And now the ballista, now the trebuchets have been dealt with, free to shoot into the infantry. Well, infantry. Out of ammunition archers here, the Remena Bawabra. Gondor spearmen starting to rout, losing stomach for the fight. In comes some Elder Council that are out of ammunition as well. The rotting meat still in there. Probably not helping matters, to be fair, giving a bit of a morale debuff to anyone in there. What happens now though? I mean, this is how this fight is going to go, I think. tentative from the attacks at this point, because they know that the defenders still have a very potent ranged arsenal, so they need to take their time. Remember Bawabrim firing, reloading. Those armor-piercing arrows, what are they firing at, I wonder? They're going after the Blackshot Dragon Slayers, a very good target to go after, in my opinion. Because they still have some ammunition of their own. Already proven to be a bit of a thorn in the side of the defenders. So to try and deal with them here would be a good move. They're good at melee as well, so you're really starting to lose very little by targeting them. Still a lot of attackers though, that's the thing, like they can still afford to commit so much forwards. Heading over these golden domes. Ballista there. The Trebuchet's a big loss, to be fair. Dalian Paladins moving in, and they're actually in and amongst the Bawabrim at this point to such an extent the Rangers probably can't shoot them very easily. The depleted Rangers are firing in. Want to be real careful about how close we get to this fight. As it often is in custom maps, there's always one brutal choke point for the defenders to take advantage of. Anyone who remembers the Horton scenarios, they would just not work nowadays because of the Rangers, to be honest with you. They were really taxing on my frames without the Rangers, so now it would be just a complete no-go. Morikbandi bows firing in. Poison arrow is probably not going to rout too much. At least not at this stage in proceedings. Seafarers of Nindamos getting closer. They're going to be able to throw their javelins into the front line. It's not a particularly well organised front line, this. I'm not really the biggest fan of it. I think the attackers have maybe caught the defenders out a little bit here. And fine margins may be all the attacks are looking for. Gondor Spearmen coming back. Well, I say coming back, that's another unit entirely, but they're already shaken. Dalian Paladins taking damage from the Seafarers. In come the Pharazim Nobles. They're not going to be at home in melee against the Dalian Paladins, though, who have managed to sort of squeeze their way forwards. I'm surprised, actually, that the attackers have made this level of progress, considering the amount of time that's left in this battle. What that suggests to me is this attack is going to fizzle out, and the attackers are not going to have... Like, at this point, with this level of the front line being compromised, I'd throw forward everything if I were the attackers. Yes, the Rangers are immediately going to reveal themselves, but there are gaps here. You can overrun this front line, and I think the opportunity's there, but they're rousing the attackers, and yeah, that's the thing, they're going to run out of steam. It would have had to have been a little preemptive, to be fair. Like, if they started moving forward at the moment that gap appeared, they wouldn't have made it in time to actually save this attack anyway. So in the end, it's probably a good thing they didn't move forward, but again, like, if gaps appear and your soldiers are on hand to push through, you're in a very healthy position as the attackers at that point, but it was a very small window of opportunity, to be fair. So I'm not surprised they couldn't take it. Noratino warriors in melee. Casimir's Rangers have revealed themselves, and they have, well, they've not revealed themselves, they're being revealed by the proximity of the Dalian Paladins, but there are so few Paladins left at this point. Seafarers of Nindamos are at least being prevented from firing from them. Casimir's Rangers, what are they going to do? Are they going to try and shoot the Dalian Paladins? Nope, they're going to shoot into the front line. Dismounted Elves of Dale, ooh, juddering frames, let's back up a little bit. So Dismounted Elves of Dale, they've been a bit of a punching bag for the Rangers at this point in the battle, and they already rout because of the sheer amount of damage they took in quick succession there. The attacking artillery, was that the catapult or was that the trebuchet? It was the trebuchet. Explains why it was so accurate. I'm going to shoot right into the heart of that defence, and poison arrows coming in, and I do think it is going to be the ranged units. Artillery, archers, crossbows, javelins, all of those units where this battle is won or lost. The infantry is just a bit of a footnote in this kind of engagement, to be honest with you. Keldrin River Patrol, javelins, cheap javelins as well, doing some good work against the Romena Bawabrim there. More infantry units coming forward to prevent any sort of counter-attack from Numenor, which is a bit foolhardy. I think there's no way that's going to make it very far, but you could argue they don't have much of a choice either. I mean, the Rangers have revealed themselves now, which is a sign that any archer that is able should shoot into them to try and cut down on their numbers, which is exactly what the attackers are doing at this point. Good to see. I think, you know, javelins could come over here and do the same, to be honest with you. Cheap javelins like that, throw their jabbies in. Crossbows are trying to deal with them, but they're also being caught out by Bawabrim now, and obviously Keldrin River Patrol are so poor in melee, they really can't afford to stick around for too long. Gondor Spearmen are in there. The Rangers are still firing away, which is why I'm still really worried to zoom in. They're shooting into that blob there, which is an interesting choice. Forward comes the cavalry again, and to be fair, it's not just a by-the-book choke point fight this. Casimir's Rangers over here from Viper action. We still can't see the Arthedain, which we should be able to be honest with you. A little bit confused as to where they actually are. Are they in here? Ah, they're back. No, they're not back here. That's just the elite Numenor infantry. What happened to the Arthedain shadow bows? Were they killed earlier on in the fight? That would be most unfortunate. Oh, there they are. Well, a lot of them were killed actually. 27 of them remaining. Castamir's Rangers still here. Nice crossfire they're getting here, but the front line for the Numenorians, is it going to be able to hold? Defending Ballista once again, hitting the statue of their lord and master. He will not be best pleased by that, I'm sure. Yeah, again, I'm sorry about not being able to zoom in, but it's just not feasible with Rangers there. It's just not. Like, it will crash. I've watched the game on replays on high quality long enough to know that it's just not a good idea. It will crash instantly, and I don't think I could. My enthusiasm couldn't last through another crash, to be honest with you. With how much time I spend recording. Seafarers of Nindamos. Again, those Ballistae. Front line for the attackers wavering, and they're going to have to pull back and try again later. I think Grey Company moving forward, so attacking mounted rangers. That's interesting. Seafarers are here. They're not really needed at this point though. The defenders have the upper hand in this engagement, no need to worry. Balakathak's guard providing some good AP to the front line. Castamir's Rangers at this point holding fire. This battle, from my perspective, will be a more entertaining one when the Rangers have finally run out of ammunition, but the defenders need to conserve it still, because they still don't have enough of a melee advantage by any stretch of the imagination to be without their range support at this point. Forward come the Grey Company once again. This begs a response, to be honest. They've got their swords out though, which suggests they may have already used their ammunition. I can't believe I'd have missed that. Charging into the Seafarers though. And back out they go. Gondor archers firing away. And that's going to be the shape of this engagement for a little while longer, I think. We're getting towards the business end of this fight where all will be decided, but for the time being the attackers are going to want to try and wear down the defenders even more with their ranged units. And only attack when the time is right. They do need to be careful though, the attackers, because there is a danger that they could sort of lose out on enough manpower that eventually the Numenor and Umbar quality will be enough to finish them off. Because I mean, it's not a huge army they've got left, to be honest with you. They've got reinforcements back here, of course, but pikes, Fountain Guard, good units. But if the phalanx is compromised by units like Pharazim Swordmasters and the like, they're going to be reliant on stuff like Citadel Guard and any... Where are the Elven King's Palace Guard? They're going to be around here somewhere, right? They can't have been committed at this point. If they were, then it was very foolish to be committed that early. But I can't imagine the attackers would have done that, sending them in to be ranger bait. 29 Shadowbows still firing, crossbow corsairs still doing their things. Alcarondas Legion still back here. They're still narrowing at Arya Sentinels as well, so pike-wise the defenders are still doing alright for themselves. Gondorian archers. Still Pharazim Nobles, interestingly enough, which, to be fair, when the attackers get depleted enough and a lot of gaps start to appear, a unit of cavalry like that could be the difference between victory and defeat. Right, come on, guys. There's only so much I can say about a skirmish fight like this. But that is, I mean, it's the wise thing to do, but we may as well go up to ×2 speed while this is going on. Because obviously the attackers are not going to want to charge unthinkingly in to another crossfire. It went pretty poorly for them last time, which has put the defenders back in with a chance of winning, to be honest. Having a look at the percentage of kills, yeah, the defenders are still minorly behind, which, you know, usually the defenders will be ahead at this point in the battle going into the late game, which is a sign, obviously, that earlier on in the fight the attackers did a lot of good things. But again, based on the map, based on the units they still have left, the defenders, I do still think they're in with a genuine chance of winning. And I think it is actually almost dead even, really. If the defenders can keep their shape and force the engagement to be what they want it to be, they will win, I think. But if the attackers can take that away from them, then the attackers will win. Slowly but surely, we will get into the business end of this fight. As depleted units of ranged units continue to take pot shots at one another, not really affecting the fight in any meaningful way at all, really. The Ballista are going to try and take out that trebuchet, I think. Will they succeed? I think, to be fair, the statue's kind of getting in their way. when you're having the most luck with regards to that. Alcarondas Legion charging forwards into Gondor Spearmen, but obviously, you know, they may get the odd kill here and there, but once again, it's a completely unimportant engagement in the grand scheme of things. And ultimately, it is on the attackers here. They need to be the ones to make something happen. The onus is always on the attackers in a siege to make something happen. It's not for the defenders to try and force an engagement. It needs to be the attackers, and their archers still have ammunition, but they're just not using the ammo at this point, which leads me to believe they don't really know what to do. But all they can do is just use their ammunition, dump it all into something ideally like the Valakith Guard that aren't shielded, but anything to try and weaken them and then move forward. Like, moving backwards is not the way to go about this. Unit of Gondor archers that are presumably out of ammo, but they're not going to achieve all that much. I mean, Casimir's Rangers that are out of ammo, Alcarondas Legion, Corsair crossbows again. It's just both sides sending unimportant units into one another to slaughter portions of the enemy army. Forward comes some Hiriauth. It's a little bit more of a genuine threat. Will that be enough to coax the Rangers into action? I don't think it will, personally. Corsair crossbows. Still firing away. A little bit more of a genuine assault coming now. Gondor leading the way with more spears. Keldrin River Patrol. But now they're going to come back down. Corsair Blackguards getting in. Hiriauth are a strong unit. They're going to need something. And it does surprise me, actually, that the attackers have decided to do this, because there's gaps galore in this front line. And that's the last thing they want. They want to stay solid and organised. Forward comes some Valakith Guard. So yeah, at this point I think we can go back down to 1 speed. We are now within the final 10k frames, the business end of the battle, as it were. And there's still a lot available to both sides, so this is where the fight's going to get violent and gritty. Valakith Guard here, obviously they're going to be able to fight off against low-quality Keldrin River Patrol and armoured Gondor Spearmen, exactly the sort of unit they like to fight. But with all these reinforcements, I mean, it's a broken assault list from the attackers, which is a sign maybe they can use their Rangers to good effect. And here they go, Viper Actions Rangers. This is why I wasn't zooming in, because they're now going to immediately start firing in decent angle into this blob. And this is going to be key. Can they do enough damage to the attackers as they move forward here to go on to win this fight? I think they could, you know. In spite of the fact that I was really complimentary of the attackers in the first half of the fight, I think the defenders have done a good job forcing the engagement to be what it is. Obviously the map has helped them a little bit here in the final stand, but that's often how a siege battle will be. There'll be one section of it, whether it's the outer defences or whether it's the innermost defences, where the defenders can really take advantage of the terrain, the defences they have available to them, use their ranged units, funnel the engagement to be what they're like. So they had an opportunity to push earlier in the fight, I think. Casimir's Rangers. I think this unit has still got a pretty decent amount of ammunition as well. Racking up the kill count. My frame rate is actually dipping a little bit even from this angle, or this far away. Ballista firing in. This is going to be punishing for the attackers, but they need to move forward. They need to make something happen. That's a big, thick brick of defending infantry, though. Forward come the Rangers. What do the attackers have left in reserve? They've got some Dunedain Troll Slayers. They've got some Rangers of their own, which is key as well, to be fair, because they have a good shot in there. They've got to shoot front on rather than side on, which means armour and shields are going to be more effective, or shields anyway. Whereas, of course, the defenders have got the advantage of shooting from the side and taking away some of that shield value. The artillery as well is a big one, because that's going to cause horrendous morale damage, that ballista. But all of these archers will have the ability now to try and shoot into the Casimir's Rangers and do the business. Rangers on the other side, Arthedain Shadow Bows, all of these Rangers. Oof, that was equal parts friendly fire and hitting the enemy there from the catapult. So you remember when I said that my enthusiasm would not last through another crash? Yeah, here we are again. I hate this game sometimes, I really do. And people wonder why I don't play hardly at all anymore. This is one of the main reasons why. I sacrifice so much of my free time to try and keep my channel going to the same pace that it is, and continually, especially in 0.97, mostly in chunks. It has to be said, like, especially with bigger battles like this, crashes happen constantly, and recording sessions take twice as long as they should normally, sacrificing even more of my free time, and I just don't have any enthusiasm left to play the game myself after that. And that's just the honest truth of the matter, to be honest with you. I mean, this is going to be our view of the battle for the time being, because if it crashes again, I won't have the willpower to even finish this fight, to be honest with you, because, I mean, it's clear the effort that's gone into creating this map, but really, it's to be expected when you have one choke point where Rangers can just form a 360-degree circle all the way around it and just shoot into it with body-piercing projectiles. Of course it's going to crash. Of course it's going to crash. You know, that's to be expected. And there's nothing I can do about that. I'm not making the game look awful just so that I can compensate for mechanical stuff like that. And it honestly does make me think maybe Rangers shouldn't be in the game. Like, mechanically I can see why they are, but I think they should be made far less prevalent than they currently are. Like, what? I mean, I don't know. I do think, even aside from the crashing problems, I do think maybe Rangers should be made a little bit less prevalent than they currently are, like, because they are all conquering in a siege like this, really. But also, just from a personal point of view, I can't help but just dislike them at this point. Like, mechanically, there's so much more trouble than they're worth for me. But whatever. I mean, it's just me, I guess, and maybe a couple of others who have to sort of deal with crashing like this. So I guess it doesn't really matter all that much. Seeing from afar, though, we can see that it looks as though Numenor, our defeat does not seem certain for Numenor. Defeat does seem certain for the attackers as they move forward. And as we can see here, it has equalised, and it's a shame because this battle is extremely close, extremely well fought, both sides playing well, full of good players. But I just can't be enthusiastic about it anymore. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. Pharism Swordmaster there, and I do feel as though the quality that Numenor have managed to leave until the late game, as well as the fact that they obviously have the hill advantage, they have got the vast majority of the Rangers that are firing into the blob working on their behalf. I don't even know if Rangers are still firing, to be honest with you, but I really am loath to zoom in again. The God Helene probably won't be helping the frame rate either with their Silverthorn arrows anyway. Alright, let's try and creep our way forwards. If I see Medieval 2 has encountered an unspecified error again, my computer's going out the window. And I'm breaking open the bottle of Maker's Mark. Oh no, that was a frame drop. Nope. Breaking out the bottle of Maker's Mark that I've got in the corner and just downing the whole thing. Screw it. There's routing, there's fighting. We can't see any of it, of course, because the game is what it is. Royal Legion of Armenelos are in their defeat seems certain again. Yeah, I think Numenor, it might just be the numbers at this point and the fact that they still had a little bit of ranged pressure coming in. Wards of the North, like Dunedain Rangers and armor-piercing arrows from the Wards of the North are obviously going to have a big impact as well. Wards of the North are going to shoot in, do more damage, and then in melee they're no pushovers either. So I think maybe the good work that the attackers did early on in shutting down that very expensive attacking, or defending cavalry I should say, has left its mark. Like, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money and funds to go down the drain if you're the defender, and it's very difficult to recover from. I think the defenders have done a decent job after that, but the losses they've incurred from just that have been fairly substantial. There's God Helene who are good in melee, there's Troll Slayers who are good in melee. It's going to be tough for the defenders. All of these units still to be committed. Still Rangers firing it over there. My best friends. Can't even really see the battle lines. Oh no, please. Yeah. That's the game, alright. It's been so long since I've had a crash heavy battle. Oh, I say so long, maybe a month and a half since I've had a crash heavy battle. But here we are again. I was going to record another battle after this as well, but no, definitely not. After this, I'm hungry and I want to stop. Look at those frames. Surely something's got to give. He was sniped by artillery. Hold our Pharaohs on. Bloody hell, I'm surprised it hasn't crashed again, to be honest with you. That is so poor. Is it gonna crash? I wonder. If it does, I'm just not doing the battle again. I'm just going to ask Sin to post the results in the fucking description or the comments below, because I'm not going through all this again just for it to consistently crash in the same place. Especially as it's towards the end of the fight. It takes me like 20 odd minutes just to get back to the same point it crashed at. Pain in the bloody ass. Well, Black Shots are in there at this point. The battle has turned. Yeah, Elven King's Palace Guard are in there. God Helene are in there. It's a very close battle, but ultimately the quality that the attackers have managed to maintain until the late game has just been too significant. Crossbows still firing. Rangers still firing. On both sides. It's a good map though. I kind of wish that maybe there wasn't just one choke point back here, because then maybe we wouldn't have the situation where Rangers can just surround a single melee fight and cause the frames to shit themselves. But yeah. Maybe another... Well, I don't know, to be honest with you, there's not really another good place to put another path, but maybe just split it into two. I don't know. I mean, this is only a problem that's going to affect me anyway, so who cares? Or me and a couple of other people who maybe would want to do a replay on a map like this. Be interested to see if maybe Scouts or Windy had the same problem. Yeah, as soon as I get any closer than this, the fight just starts to die. Part of the problem may also be we had an issue like this on the Merlond map, didn't we? In a replay like this, where even getting close to the fight again after a certain point caused the frames to die off, and that might be because it's a cityscape map as well. There's not a huge amount of fences, but all of these factors combined together make it what it is, I think. No, Irish Sentinels, victory seems certain. No. Who knows? Defeat seems certain for the Warns of the North as well. It could be that the crossbows and the Rangers still doing the damage that they're doing might be enough to, I don't know, I mean, it's still tricky. There's only so much I can say at this range, of course, and there's still a good 3,000 frames left. There we go. Look at that slideshow. I don't mean this in a derogatory manner towards the game or the people who made the map, i.e. Sin, by the way. But I can't be happy about this situation. There's a lot of routing units here as well. I mean, it's only like catapult crewmen. Citadel Guard are routing off as well, though. God Helene, victory seems certain. I mean, it should be that eventually the numbers for the defenders will give way, especially now that the Rangers are gone. But I can't zoom in. Frames are still terrible. One of the attacking armies is now gone. Romana Abarim are still in there. God Helene, defeat seems certain. I don't know, you know. Ones of the North still in there. Victory seems certain. Still quite a few of them. What happened to the... I mean, it's hard to say if there's been misplays or misjudgments from both sides, or good judgments from either side, because obviously we can't zoom in and actually see what's going on close up, but yeah. I am hungry, let me tell you. Gonna get a snack after this. Maybe if my mood improves towards the game, I might do another recording session in the evening, or later in the, I guess, night. But I doubt it, to be honest with you. I think we'll leave more recording to another day. Wild Times. Ones in the North, victory seems certain. God Helene taking a bit of damage, but I think at this point the Pharazim Swordmasters and the Royal Legion are gone, which means they're really relying on stuff like Naru and Irish Sentinels, which are, you know, there's not really enough of them to form a cohesive phalanx against a concerted effort. You can actually see the frames are still struggling in the distance there. Corsair Crossbowmen are going to add themselves to melee, 27 of them. Who knows, that could be the difference between victory and defeat in a battle that is this close. And it is a shame, because this is such a high quality battle. It's just a shame this is how it had to end. Maybe Rangers could be AP instead of body piercing. I don't know. But it's just a problem that it affects me, really, so I mean, I'm not really expecting the game to bend around me. Again, I'd be interested to see if people like Windy or Scouts have the same issues. Again, it can't be a PC related issue, because my PC can run Medieval 2 just fine. Any PC that isn't absolutely awful would be able to do that in the modern era. So the game itself is reaching its limits. And it has been for quite a while with Reforged, to be honest with you, with the new mechanics that have been added. Good battle though. It's always good to see new maps. New maps are usually what keeps my enthusiasm alive, but this... no. Very much no. Some Dunedain Troll Slayers back here. I'm not sure why they haven't moved forward. Maybe Arthedain crashed. Maybe that's it. It wouldn't surprise me, because maybe, you know, Inarius suffered the same problems I did, only in-game. Could be it. And the attackers should have... I mean, even if the attackers don't go on to win, they should have, because if those Dunedain Trollslayers had been in melee, the AP would have ripped what's left of the defenders asunder. But you know what, let's just zoom backwards. End this farce while we still can. Time 6 speed. Oh no, he didn't crash. How about that? Dunedain Trollslayers moving in, he just forgot about them. Not sure how, because he's only got a couple of units. There we go. Victory is theirs, 3% the differential. And, yeah. Not sure what else to say, to be honest with you, about the battle. Good battle. It is what it is with regards to what happened well, reliability-wise with the battle, but that's just how it is, I suppose. The battle itself, I do think the attackers deserve to win. Big numbers in terms of the kills for the defenders, but that's always going to happen in a 3v5 where the defenders are funneled into one single choke point at some point. The attackers deserve to win though. They shut down the cavalry. Big cavalry presence from the defenders. Didn't really come to much of anything in the end. Sin did some stuff with his cavalry, but ultimately nowhere near enough to pay for it. And the Umbar cavalry just did nothing at all, really. Nothing of note. Eclipse could have, if the charge was a little bit more favourable into the Black Shots to kill Dale's general, he could have maybe justified the inclusion of the Warlords, but in the end the Umbar cavalry was just a bit of a waste, to be honest with you. But defending wise they did well enough, but again it's just a single choke point and you're surrounding it with rangers, so there's not a great deal of skill involved, if I'm being honest. But they did a good job at sort of defending the outer choke points. Pulling back, leaving units in behind as sort of a rear guard as well is a good move. But ultimately the attackers, they took the lead early on in the fight and never really surrendered it. Having a look at the kills for the Numenor army, obviously the Rangers got tons of kills, that's not too surprising. Castamir's Rangers probably got an even more extreme amount of kills, to be honest, because the Adunheim Shadowbows were already fairly depleted by the time they actually got into the really dangerous part of the battlefield for the Rangers to be in. And several units getting over 100 as well. Bawabrim, considering the amount of ammunition they have, that's kind of the amount of kills you expect from them. Depending on what they were against, depends on what whether it was worthwhile or not. Farazim Nobles did okay. What happened to the Karibarim, I wonder? Yeah, not a huge amount of kills there either, to be honest with you, but he did what he could with them, I suppose. Abarim did okay. Royal Legion of Armenelos and the Farazim Swordmasters left it a little bit too late to lay down their effectiveness, to be honest with you. Where were the Swordmasters? There they are, 86. Yeah, that's not enough for a unit Farazim Swordmasters, to be honest with you, in this context. So yeah, the attackers deserved the win. It's been one of those battles, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, I can't really say, like, it's a good map. Thank you to Sin for sending this one in, and obviously thank you for putting in the effort to make a new map for the new patch. Well, new hotfix, I suppose. Although it kind of has turned into a new patch, to be honest with you, with some of the additions and changes. Big thanks to all the players for being a part of this battle as well, because it was very high quality. Obviously, you know, all the players that are on display today have got plenty of experience with the game, so you kind of expect that. But yeah, I do hope that the ending to it hasn't overshadowed things too much. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think the next battle I do, next recording I'll do, will be one of the more basic battles again. Because honestly, when I see a large scale battle like this that runs over 40,000 frames now, my immediate thought isn't excitement. It is a sense of slight trepidation and dread that this is the sort of thing that can happen, and it has been justified. Ever since 0.97 has sort of dropped, it has been justified more often than not, to be honest with you. But it is a problem that only I have. It is also a problem that simply cannot be fixed from my end. Like, you have to trust me on that. Like, it's something that cannot be fixed from my end. Either the game has to change in several ways to make it easier, or it just carries on as is and I just have to tank my way through it, which that is what is going to happen. I'm going to have to tank my way through that, but as it is, obviously, it just... that's the thing for me. Like, it does make it... It makes my enthusiasm to play the game myself very, very low, because I put so much of my free time, because my schedule is limited nowadays. I put a lot of my free time into actually doing these, and the fact that it takes twice as long in several cases for me to actually do these, I just don't want to play it myself anymore. And that's the truth behind it. Like, Eclipse was actually messaging me saying, oh, it'd be cool if you played with us sometime. It would, but I just don't want to be brutally honest, because of this. And in, like, time off, like, sort of the breaks, the semester break between spring and summer, that is a more likely time for me to play, because there will be more free time for me to have. Even then, to be honest, I'll still have a bit of university work to do, but I'll have a little bit more free time, and it won't be a case of after I record I have very little free time, and if a recording leaves a sour taste in my mouth, I'm certainly not going to want to go on and play Reforged myself. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations, to be honest. But yeah, it is what it is. Like, it is a good map. It was a high quality battle. Mechanical problems just reared their ugly head once again. As for what comes next, I think it will be, again, it won't be another big siege. Actually, I think I do have a couple of big sieges, including one on Moria, but there's no way I'm doing a Moria siege after an experience like this. Yeah, I think I'll probably try and do one of the newer battles I've got. I might even go back to the hotfix and try and do a battle from the hotfix, because they're less likely to be something like this, and it is maybe a little bit more informative, all things considered. So yeah, we'll see. I hope you enjoyed this for what it was, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.